2017, and 2 years ago, Lisa and I wanted to film Mom and Dad telling their story of how they met and how they got engaged, and then we didn't do it, and then last year we forgot, and then this year Lisa wasn't here, so I'm doing it today before I head back to Dallas. So, first question is, how did you guys meet?
We met in Delaware Water Gap, Pennsylvania on July 13th, 1966. And Carol had gone to a meeting with Chi Omega at
White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. And I had taken a bus to Baltimore, Maryland to my Aunt Kathleen and Uncle Charles. And Mom and Daddy were to drive up. No, they were to fly up and meet us. And they did. And then they borrowed Kathleen's car and took me up to Delaware Water Gap to the Fred Waring music workshops that we both had Ennis Davis scholarships for. We both had heard them at our universities or colleges and filled out the applications, only I bought a tape recorder, reel-to-reel they had back then is all we had, to make a tape, to send in a tape, which is one of the things that they requested. And Mr. Tony didn't ever send in a tape, and he got in anyway. Girls always had the most competition, I reminded.
I drove up from Baylor. I just finished my junior year at Baylor, and I drove, like 15 hours the first day. I got past Indianapolis and then drove on up to Delaware Water Gap. And I had gotten there before Carol. There were 10 of us scholarship kids. There were 5 of us, 5 boys and 5 girls. There were only 2 from the South and only 2 from the same state, and that was Carol and me. And I happened to be walking through it was at the Castle Inn in Delaware Water Gap, which is an old hotel that's actually been restored recently. And it's the home of Shawnee Press, the music publishing company. And Carol and these people came in, and I said, "Hi, I'm Tony from Texas." And she said, "Oh, I'm Carol Conway, also from Texas."
We drove up, and you were standing there in your plaid shirts and your matching pastel, probably blue. He had 2 sets. One had yellow in it, and one was blue, baby blue. And so he had one of those plaid shorts on. Sticks out his hand. I'm Tony Graves from Tony Graves from La Mesa, Texas. And Mama and Daddy, Mama was so impressed. She said, after a little bit, after he talked and told us things and about his family, and
I left.
She said, "I keep my eye on him." And I said, "Oh, Mama."
And with me, that was usually the kiss of death, because in La Mesa, all the mothers loved me and all the girls hated me because the mothers loved me.
Is that the only reason?
I don't know. It's the only reason I know of. I can't think of any
You
other.
might have been a little fresh or something,
Fresh.
That's what it was called when you were fresh.
Well, yeah, I know, but I just can't.
At the
I'm not sure. I thought he was
at the workshop.
nerd.
No, he wasn't.
At the workshop, we were hired to work there during the summer. We were there for about 8 weeks, and the workshop went from Monday through Saturday, and we would change the sheets and make up the beds for all the people who were going to attend, and we served all the meals, and we called ourselves the Waring Blenders, and we would do a little song to call people to the meal, and so we were.
And of course, Tony was in charge. How did you get in charge?
No, I wasn't in charge.
I thought you were the Waring Blenders.
No.
Well, somebody.
Rob Ryder did most of it, but we had a really good time. I was the only one there that had a car.
It was his mama's car, a white car. What was that? Chevrolet?
I think so.
Chevrolet. Anyway, and then it was July 20th, somewhere around my birthday, I get this big can in the mail from my boyfriend at Texas State, Southwest Texas State University at the time, Rick Ogilvie, sent me a can of bubble gum, which I loved.
Almost a gallon can of it. And I usually went and got the mail and brought it to her and
I have
said,
to tell
"Here,
about the mail."
you have another thing from your boyfriend." She was dropped to him, and in at Baylor, when you were dropped to somebody, that was the next thing before getting engaged.
Which it wasn't as far as I was concerned. If he thought so, too bad, because well, I wasn't serious. But anyway, also on the way, bus trip up to Baltimore, Maryland, to Kathleen and Charles, this guy sat by me on the bus to Kathleen's house. And he asked me where I was going, and I told him, of course, and to Fred Burns Music. He knew where everything was up there, and he said, so he knew, I get this letter from him while I'm there, which comes when Tony gets the mail at Fred Burns Music Workshops. And I open it up and read it, and then he said, let me see it. And then he reads.
You told me a lot about it, and then I said,
told
can
him
I
about
see
it.
it?
Let me see it, yeah. And then he did you read it to everybody?
No, later on, I used it sort of as a comedy act because
him and his
he
comedy
proposed to her
in the letter.
and told her that he just couldn't see any reason that they wouldn't get married except the fact that he didn't drive and didn't have a car.
He lived with his mother.
And he thought that she should enter the Miss America pageant, and after she won the Miss America pageant, then he wanted her to marry him.
Do you still have this letter?
I don't know. We have a lot of letters, but
I don't know if I
she
threw away
thinks
all
maybe
my letters from
maybe
Greg.
we lost it.
I might
But you'd
have.
met this person once?
Yeah,
It was on a bus.
On the bus.
Like a 4-hour bus ride. A little crazy.
How did he know where you were?
Because I told him I'm going to this workshop at Fred Burns Music Workshop, and I've been to convention at Chi Omega at the Greenbrier.
So he
Everybody
looked
knew
up the
where-
address?
Sure.
I'm sure that's all he had to do.
Oh, it was
Sean
very
told
well
him.
known.
It was for that part of the country. And my dad was so excited because he's from Pennsylvania that we're going to Pennsylvania. That's why they were flying up to see relatives and see the workshop and what we're going to.
Her parents had met in Pennsylvania.
So they met. Yes, they did. When Mama had gone up with Aunt Rowena, Texas wife, when he was summer training for the summer clubs before he made the big leagues.
Baseball.
Baseball leagues.
Nightclubs.
What don't we know? Anyway, and that's where Mom and Daddy met. And then Daddy, after he drove Helen at his one of his sister's car down to Helen and Bing, he got back on the bus and took the bus back to Pennsylvania, which was so funny that this other character and I met on the bus. But anyway, and then Daddy and Mama wrote letters for a long time. And finally, this boy that Mama had been dating back home and was asking her to go to different places and things all the time in a little diary that she kept real shortly. I said, Mama, that guy must have really liked you. And she would never acknowledge that. But anyway, meanwhile, she and Daddy met. And then she gets a letter Grandma Rowland got a letter about, she's been trying to get in touch with Mary Helen again. And she wrote him that she was married. Anyway.
Also, as part of the workshop, we put on sort of a talent show several different times that we would do a show for the people who were there. They would have workshops for like high school kids that were in choir, and they had workshops for church musicians, music directors from all over the country would come, and also school teachers would come. And they would study new music, and Waring would teach them his way of pronunciation and all. It was really a really excellent workshop. Plus, some of the Pennsylvanians would also perform for us from time to time.
I'm going to take a picture real quick with my phone. Okay. You can continue.
Okay.
And then our plans were, how long was the workshop? 6
We
weeks?
were there about 6 to 8 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks. And we would go out, all the kids would go in Tony's car, mother's car, of course, and where would go into stores and to go have ice cream sundaes.
We would walk down the hill to this little drugstore that had a little thing. We would have a CMP, a chocolate marshmallow peanut sundae, a lot. And the ones that drank went on down further to the Deerhead bar. I think we went there once just to see what it looked like. But then on Monday, we worked all during the week, but then we had off on Mondays.
That's a dark night of the theater.
Because actually the workshop would start, I guess it would start on Tuesdays. And so we would go to different theaters around the area because we were in the Catskills and there were a lot of summer stock theaters there. We went to Cherry Lane, or Cherry Playhouse and Pocono Playhouse. We saw West Side Story and can't remember what all we saw. I'm sure I have programs of them. But then there was also an Italian restaurant that was outside of Delaware Water Gap, and sometimes at night we would go there and we would sing. It wasn't karaoke, it was just you'd get up and sing. And Carol would sing Aldi La, Aldi La, or what?
Probably.
Yeah.
While I was in Baltimore with Aunt Kathleen, somebody else I had met. How did I meet him? Maybe at the Chi-Omega convention. This guy asked me out for a date, and we went to Paper Mill Theater, and who was
Paper Mill Playhouse.
Paper Mill Playhouse in Robert. Paper Mill Playhouse, was that in New Jersey?
That was in New Jersey.
Forget
yes.
it. This was Tony.
It's totally
We were
wrong.
in Baltimore, Maryland. No, that big in the round theater, and Robert Morris was playing in How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. And that guy was so fresh on my date, the only date. We went to dinner first and then to the show. And he was so fresh. I remember getting home and telling Kathleen, I'm not going out with him again.
And you were saying that I was fresh, so in what way do you compare the two?
Not to this guy. But I did never had that before. Then I realized that must be what it's like, these guys I've heard about in the East and other coasts and stuff. And whatever. But no, and she just thought, I remember her, you could tell she thought that was funny. Like in high school, Mom and Daddy thought it was
Who
funny.
thought it was funny?
Aunt Kathleen, you could tell she thought it was kind of funny that I was put out by this guy. And I wasn't going to go out with him ever again. And I made him take me home.
Do you remember the original question?
Yeah, but I just had to fill that in. That went way back.
So anyway, whenever I went up there, my plans were for my best friend Phil Sitton to come up at the end of the workshop, and we were going to go to New York. I'd been to New York when I was 12 with my parents, and I wanted to go back again, and Phil had not been, and he wanted to come up, and so we had made that agreement before I left, and Carol had made the same agreement with her friend Mary Evelyn Gunn, and she was going to fly up, and they were going to go to Bermuda.
Bermuda.
And then
Some of her
we're going
relatives.
to go to New York, and so Carol brought up her birthday. That was just a week after we got there, and the Barnstormers, the Bragg Blenders went out and got presents for Carol because it was her birthday, and they got a yellow rose for me to give my Yellow Rose of Texas, which I thought was funny, and so then
All this time I thought he got
also then at
Yeah.
the same
I
time,
was gonna say.
some of the girls went out and bought the stuff for you, and during this same period, just a few days later, the University of Texas Tower shooting happened. And of course, everybody was all excited, wanted to know if Carol knew the people who'd gotten shot and all this stuff, because it was a big deal in all the news. And we all ate. We would serve, and then we would eat in the kitchen. What was the lady's name that was in charge of the kitchen?
Elsie.
Yeah, okay.
What year was this again?
1966. And
We were-
so we worked together for 6 or 8 weeks, and it seemed like we would, after the workshop was over, like a lot of the participants would go to the bar, and we'd go to get our ice cream cone or ice cream sundae. And a lot of the kids, we would just sit around and talking and all. And of course, we had to get up about 6 o'clock to serve breakfast. So we would be talking, and then I would usually be the first one to say, well,
Well, good
I'm
night,
going to
everybody.
bed because I've got to
See him.
go get up early. So I would go off to bed. My roommate was a guy named Jim Word. He was a black kid, and he was the only black there. And everybody else was so concerned that they had put this Southerner with a black person, and it didn't make any difference to me at all. We were good friends, but it was ironic how they thought of Southerners.
Huh.
Texas?
So you were the only ones from Texas, but there wasn't really anyone else from the South?
No. No, let's see. One was from Ohio. One was from New York, from
Long Island. Because that's how she's saying. I'm from Long Island.
and mostly Midwest.
The reason I had to break in and tell about that date is I was so impressed. His uncle was an Episcopalian bishop, and so that one he was not a nice guy. Oh, he was wonderful until the end of the day.
So after 2 or 3 weeks, Carol and I had gotten to be pretty good friends, and sort of paired up, and I don't think any others particularly did. But she happened to mention one time that she didn't really care for pizza because the only time she'd ever had pizza, this was back when pizza was fairly new. I had some whenever I was at Baylor, but I don't think I'd ever had it before I went to college. And she mentioned that she'd gotten sick with pizza, and so she didn't think she liked it.
On
And
a
so
vacation with my
I asked her out, and we went to have pizza to
Okay.
show her that pizza is good. And that was our only date there, because we went to the theater almost every week, but all the kids would go together, and we'd have a great time. And
We hardly had dates. In other words, we just
it was
worked together.
everybody. I think that one of the people that worked with us, that worked at the workshop, Rob.
Ryder.
No, there was one who was on staff, and he had a car, and so we couldn't all 10 get in my car, but we took the 2 cars to the theater. Most everybody went every time that we went out to the theater.
There was a dance at the playhouse, at the thing.
One of the dances, yeah, she was playing hard to get at one point,
Of course.
and so she had a date to this dance, and so I happened to know that one of the girls that was attending the thing happened to be Miss New York, and so I asked Miss New York to be my date.
What?
He did, because I already had a date.
And I had
Do that.
She had told me that she had a date, and I said, "Oh, okay, well, I'll get a date too." And so I asked out Miss. I don't remember what her real name was, but I knew that she was Miss New York.
That guy was on staff. He wasn't one of us. He was some staff person there.
Fred
Really
Waring
nice.
loved to hire Miss State people, Miss States, and Miss America. Several Miss Americas sang with Waring. Jacqueline Mayer, who was Miss America, probably in 1961 or 2, had been a Pennsylvanian, and there was Miss Ohio with us, but he liked Miss Titles who were good singers, and it was good PR, of course, when we toured. So then, when the workshop was almost over, about a week before, Phil decided that he wasn't going to come up, and I thought, well, it's not going to keep me from going to New York. I'll go on anyway, and we had been having such a good time that Mary Evelyn was still coming up, and so
Oh, no.
so I told them whenever Mary Evelyn got there, I actually had an audition for Waring. I had auditioned at the workshop, and then I was supposed to sing at Shawnee Inn, which was about 5 miles away, and Fred Waring owned it, and it was
And the golf course and all.
it was a big resort that was well known for its golf things, and most of the Pennsylvanians would actually perform there, and they would also have people audition. And I had auditioned at the workshop, and then Jim Wheeler, who was the director, like the assistant director for the Pennsylvanians, asked me if I knew the song Mariah from Paint Your Wagon. I said, I've heard it, but I don't know it. And he said, well, that'd be a good song for you, so get it and learn it. And it was just like 3 days before my audition, and has a lot of words and a lot of verses, but that's what I sang for my audition. And I remember afterwards, Mr. Waring got up and said, "Well, that young man has a lot of personality, which means he doesn't sing very well, but he has a great personality." I thought, and I took it that way. I thought, well, don't call us, we'll call you, and they probably wouldn't hear from him. And so meanwhile, we'd had such a good time at the workshop, and I liked Mary Evelyn. She got there a couple of days before the workshop was over. And so I said, well, I'm going to go to New York, and because they were going to take a bus into New York. And I said, I've been to New York before, and I'd be happy for you to go with me. I said, we don't have to see New York together, whatever you want to do. Because Mary Evelyn had a preacher friend who they were going to stay with in the city. And so they decided, well, it'd be fun to drive in rather than take
And
the bus.
split the expenses on the car, which helped him.
And so
You were going by yourself?
yeah. And so they decided they would, and so we had such a good time going in. Mary Evelyn said, "Well, I think my friend could probably find you a place to stay," and so actually I ended up. The friend had gotten them a place to stay, and I stayed with him. And
We stayed at a girl's place that wasn't even there. That it was nice.
yeah,
Not.
and I slept on the floor in his apartment, and we saw a terrible Broadway show called Wait a Minute. It was
It's called what?
Wait a
Wait a
minute.
Minute, and it was from Australia or somewhere,
What-
or no, Africa. But it would, if that had been my only Broadway experience, I wouldn't have cared for it much. We also saw Sweet Charity, starring Gwen Verdon, and then we also went to see a play called, it was an Arthur Miller play called A View from the Bridge,
You liked
which
it,
we
didn't you?
almost all slept through
Yeah.
because it was pretty heavy and we were really, really tired.
Yeah,
But
and we
anyway-
girls were wearing spike heels and trying to keep up with him, showing us things.
Yeah, because
we were exhausted.
my parents had taken me on the Gray Line tour when I was 12, but it's amazing how much I remember because New York's fairly easy to get around, and so I tried to show them everything that I could remember from it. Plus, we were seeing all these shows, and we had such a good time that they were talking. They were flying back to Texas. They're going to go on this cruise, not a cruise first, but they were going to Bermuda first, and
Airline strike. The airline strike, and that kind of put everything on hold.
well, I forgot
And
about that.
she and Mary Evan and I were going with some relatives from Pennsylvania of hers that she had there too, and you forgot about it. And what happened at the very last minute, we had canceled and had alternative plans. Were to go up to Boston where my aunt and uncle are, and what happened is at the very last minute, the Bermuda thing came back on. The airline strike was broken, and so Mary Evan was still going with the relatives. But we were going to see, because I had already contacted my aunt and uncle. And I remember Aunt Helen saying, well, now who is coming? How many rooms do I need? It's you and who? I said, me and a guy that I met at workshop. Oh, okay. I know, it was kind of weird. At first I thought, this is odd. Of course, my parents thought it was fine, all this, because Mary Evan, that we were good friends and stuff. She was in my bridesmaid.
Anyway, so they had decided to cash in their plane tickets back to Texas and to ride back with me because I was just lots of fun.
He
I
brought,
guess.
and he said it would help him because,
I did not tell you
did
any
sell
such
that.
thing.
Oh, yes, you did.
Probably would, because it'd be a point to
Of course.
persuade.
Spread 3 ways. You didn't have
Whatever.
all the gas to buy.
So he'd
Yeah.
been to New York. You'd been to New York once before when you were 12, and then
Yeah.
Mom, what about you? Was this your first time going to New York?
Yes,
had I not been to New
you
York?
had never been to New York before.
I sure hadn't been to where was it when we were way home? New Orleans, where I had the
Well, we
cooler
haven't
thing.
gotten there yet.
No, we get there. Well, anyway.
So anyway, Mary Evelyn had gone to Bermuda. We went to Aunt Helen and Uncle Bing's, and she took us to
Cakes.
she took us to the Plymouth Plantation, which is where the old Plymouth colony was, and they reenact. They actually act like they're people from that time, and it was a lot of fun. And she fixed crab cake sandwiches or something,
And
and she took us on up to Rockport in Maine, or not Maine, but I guess Rockport, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of pictures from boats and all there. But we spent about 3 days there, and then came back to pick up Mary Evelyn, and we were picking her up at JFK, and it's before cell phones, and we spent hours trying to
looking
find
for
her.
Mary Evan.
She
She gotten scared and gone back herself.
she ended up going to the guy's house, or the guy's apartment in New York that her friend, the one that I had stayed with, and we finally, I don't know how we finally met up with her, but we did. And the next day, we struck out for Texas. And on the way home, I kept thinking, I really do like this Carol girl. And I said, but I know she has a boyfriend. He's probably going to be sitting out on the porch with a gun waiting to meet this guy that she's driving all the way from New York to Texas.
I didn't tell him.
And
that.
as we were going on down, you come to a point where there's a road that goes to New Orleans and there's a road that goes on to Louisiana, and on straight misses it. And I asked if they'd ever been to New Orleans, and neither one had. I said, well, you want to go? Because I'd been there once before. So we took that road and went there. we got there fairly late at night, and we found this dive of a hotel.
Dive. We were
I think
scared to
I
death.
think it probably rented by the hour.
Yeah, it was creepy.
It was probably the dirtiest and creepiest hotel I've ever
We
been
were
in.
so scared, and we thought we were safe because you were next door.
Yeah.
Little did we know.
But I said, well, we're not going to sleep much anyway, because we went out to walk up and down
We went
Bourbon
to
Street.
Pat O'Brien's, the place that had they had them at the flea market yesterday for sale. I have one from there. I may have gotten rid of it.
You order this hurricane or whatever, and you
It
get
is
the
a
glass.
hurricane.
And something that all the tourists do.
I don't think Tony got one. Mary Evan and I did, but I ended up
I think
giving
I had been there on choir tour, and I think I probably had one from
probably gave it
from
to
them.
somebody else, but I ended up giving her mine. She had two.
So anyway, then that was the last night before we got to Texas, and we just got over the border into Texas. We had stopped and took a picture at the Texas sign saying, "Oh, we're back home," and about 3 miles later, we ran out of gas. Now, out in East Texas, there's not that much traffic.
How old were you?
I was 20. We both turned 20. I guess it was her 21st birthday. Both of us were 21. And so I thought, well, I've got to find some way. And so I was sort of hitchhiking, and somebody, the local, stopped and picked me up and took me to get some gas, and then back to the
We
car.
have a picture of that. Yeah, that is so funny. Not funny.
And so then later on we got to Carol's house, and all the way home I had taken a lot of pictures like I do now. I took a lot of pictures then. I took slides at the workshop, and Carol said that Carol said that she was going to have a party for all her friends and show the pictures, and I said, well,
Because tell them about Mary Evan's friend. This is
yeah. Was it Mary Evelyn?
Mary Evan dated
Okay.
Boy De Leon.
Yeah. Well, before they came up to the workshop, Carol was talking about her friend Mary Evelyn that was coming up, and she said that she had met this guy that went to Baylor and wondered if I happened to know him. She said, I don't know his name, but he was in the Peace Corps, and he's at Baylor. And I said, that's my roommate.
Is that a small world?
Moy De Leon. And so I said, God had a plan for us to meet each other, because if the workshop hadn't worked, I had Moy, and he would have invited them up or something.
Well, Cecilia.
Moy, M-O-I. Moy De Leon.
But here's
he and his brother were roommates of mine my freshman year, and then Moy and I got an apartment together my sophomore and junior year.
Our other
Where's
good
he
friend.
Costa Rica.
from? Okay.
And her other good friend, Cecilia Houp, was dating him.
Well, now that I knew that wasn't right. Cecilia had told Mary Evelyn about this boy that she was dating. It wasn't Mary Evelyn.
Cecilia
that knew
was
him.
another of my bridesmaids.
I'll go back and
in
edit this whole
twirlers.
tape. Sorry. No, Cecilia was dating my roommate, and Cecilia and Mary Evelyn were both in our wedding.
Both my friends. Is that funny? One came up and the other one was dating his roommate.
Anyway.
She would have liked him.
So we went on. We got to Carol's house, and of course I had met them before, and they invited me to spend the night, so I did. And then the next day I left, and as I was going home, I thought, oh, I had such a good time. I just really liked this girl. And by the time I got home, I had decided not only did I like her, I loved her, and I was going to marry her. Even though she had this boyfriend who wasn't there to shoot me. I didn't know that she had actually called me and said, I don't want to see you whenever I don't want to see you when I first get home. Just wait.
We had a coat date and that was it, just to say goodbye.
And so I got on.
Big
Finally,
Willie's.
it's about 400 miles from San Marcos to Seminole, where Mother and Daddy lived. And so I got out there, and I didn't really say, I told Mother and Daddy about the workshop and all, but I didn't tell, that I was in love. I thought, well, that's kind of crazy. And then Tawana Boatwright, a friend of mine from high school and college, and another good friend of mine, Terry Phelps, came out to see me at home, out at the farm. And this is between the time I got there and the time I went back to Carol's party. And one of them said, they'd been there probably an hour and a half, and we were just visiting and talking about the summer and what they'd done the summer and what I'd done. And they said, Tony, you've changed. I said, what do you mean? She said, you've changed. And I said, well, I've met somebody. And they just laughed. And so I said, I'm going to a party at her house later on. Well, meanwhile, I kept waiting for Carol to call and tell me when her party was. And she didn't call.
I was waiting for him to call
And
because
she-
you don't call boys back then. You
Yeah, I remember you always telling me
And
that.
she didn't call, and she didn't call, and so finally,
on purpose.
I called her and said, I said, are you, and I was really excited
I'll
about
never forget that call.
And she said, I said, well, aren't you having your party? I said, I have my film all developed, and I'm ready to show it if you, and I said, do you still want me to come? She said, well, if you want to.
Well, that was exactly
I
what
was
I'm
just
begging you.
crestfallen to think, if you don't want me to come, you're acting so.
I didn't stop you one
But
bit. You know.
I said, well, I'll come. And so I came and I got to meet her friends and all. And I showed my pictures. And we had such a good time that it was about time for me to go back to Baylor. And
Where'd you show the pictures? Was it
At
at
her
her
house.
parents' house?
Yeah, at her
Oh,
parents'
so you met her
house.
parents again?
Oh, yeah. This is the third time
They
I've seen
liked
them.
him. Remember, my mother
When
liked
was, what was the second time?
When I got to their house
Oh,
at
that's right. You
night.
dropped her off.
Yeah.
That's
spent
right.
the night.
And so I spent a night there, and I said, well, tomorrow there's a football game. I'm such a sports person. There's a football game at Baylor. I said, would you like to go to it? And she said, well, my parents never let me go out of town on a date before. And I said, well, ask them.
21 years old.
That
Yeah.
is not true because in high school, when was it that I had that date, a date with a guy, an older guy, and another couple, and they told mom and daddy where we were going, and we were going to Austin, and that was the first time I was going out of town. And we end up
Well,
in
that's
some
hardly out of town. That's 15 miles away.
It's 28 from
25.
28 from San Marcos, exactly. 28 from my house. And do you know that guy took me to some other movie, some X-ray, some movie that wasn't what they said. They said it was a Walt Disney movie. Well, when I walked in, I made him take me home. I spoiled the whole date for the other couple and me. And they thought that was, I remember they just kind of thought I was funny too. They called in.
I
Everybody
don't think
laughs
they
at
thought
me.
you were funny.
No, they did. They just thought I was kind of
Well,
naive or something.
anyway, she
Oh.
said, well,
I also got to tell you that I knew Mary Ellen was coming, and she had taken Cecilia's boyfriend when we went to Mexico right out from under her and went out with him. and do you know, years later, I asked Cecilia, I said, before she passed
She
away
was
of
dying, I
cancer.
remember.
And she said, yes, of course that bothered me. They were like sisters. And yeah, that's what she did to her. So I knew I had to tell her when she got there. I like this guy. We don't hardly had a we don't date, but anything. But I worked with him this summer, and I really like this guy. In other words, stay
well,
away from him.
I was playing it so cool all the way home. They would switch. One of them would sit in the front seat for a few hours, and at the next rest stop they'd switch. And so she was afraid that I was going to fall for Mary Evelyn.
Well, Mary Ellen will go after anybody. I saw it. I've been there.
Well, maybe she'd still be married if she'd married me.
What?
Or maybe not. Maybe she divorced you too.
Anyway, back to, I've asked her to go to Baylor with me to a ball game, which I didn't care about the ball game, but I had free tickets and I would like to have her around.
Before you continue, Mom, what were you thinking all this time? Because you said he was saying that he was driving home or whatever and realized that he loved you. What were you thinking? Do you have any
Probably
moment,
the same
specific
similar
moment?
things, of course. Why would I have told my girlfriend? I didn't tell anybody anything except my parents or somebody that I really, like this guy. I told her so she would stay away and not do what she did to Cecilia. Exactly, and I had it planned way ahead. I knew Mary Ellen was coming. Oh no, that's trouble.
Well, meanwhile, before I came back to her house, on this long trip from her house to Seminole, by the time I decided I was in love with her, I not only did that, but I started planning. I planned
Hear
on
this.
that I was going to invite her to go to the ball game and see if we could have that time at Baylor. And then I was thinking at Thanksgiving that I would tell her that I loved her. And at Christmas, I would ask her to marry me. And then Valentine's Day, I would give her a ring.
You had it all planned.
And so I had all this planned out, before I know if she really likes me. But, have plans.
What month
Be
was
prepared.
the football game?
Do what?
What month was the
Was it
football
August or
game?
September?
It was, last part of August or first part of September.
And we met
It was a ball
when
game.
we
It was a
met.
preseason football game before registration for Baylor.
And when did we
So-
meet? Remind again, how shortly before?
July 13th. So this is the end of the next month or the beginning of the following
Pretty
month.
fast, huh?
And so her parents, she said, well, they probably won't let me go, but she said, I'll ask. Well, they said, sure, if you want to go, that's fine. Because I already told her that she would stay with a friend of mine, Pat Strother, a girl, and that, because I had an apartment at Baylor, and that she would take a bus back because I had to register for school the following day. And so we came up.
Football game.
What?
I said him who doesn't like football.
That's
take
why
me to
I said
football.
that. And so we drove to Waco, and I introduced her to Pat and probably some of my other friends. And the next day we went to the ball game, and we stayed until probably through halftime. And then I said, I'm kind of bored. You're going to catch a bus later on. Do you want to go back to Pat's apartment and get your stuff and talk? And so we did. And so we got to Pat's, and
Pat Sitton?
Pat Strother.
Oh.
No, this was before I
Pats.
ever met Pat Sitton. She was Pat something else then. I can't remember.
Oh, it was a girl.
yeah.
Pat Strother was a girl friend of mine. She was a year older than me, but we'd gone to Baylor for 3 or 4 years together. And so we got to Pat's, and we just had such a good time laughing and talking and just having lots and lots of fun. And so we were sitting on her couch, and suddenly all my well-laid plans just sort of went out the window, and I said, I love you, would you marry me? And then I said, there was a clock right above the couch where we were sitting, and she said, are you serious? And I said, yeah, I'm serious. And I said, well,
I said,
what?
I'm the one who said, I'll give you how many minutes to
1 minute.
to change your mind?
Yeah, and
Thought
so
it was 3 minutes.
It was 1 minute, and so we sat there and watched the clock, and then she said yes,
So you just sat in silence.
and I kissed her, and probably an hour and a half, 2 hours later, I took her to the bus, and that night I went to a movie,
This is funny.
and the whole time
What have I
I
done?
can't remember the name of the movie. I can't remember. I think it was a comedy, but all I can remember is thinking dishwashers and washing machines and refrigerators. What have I done?
I didn't have a washing machine for a long time.
So
Went
anyway,
to the washateria.
so that's how we met. And then the amazing thing about it is that whenever I was I actually had the 2 auditions for Waring. And when I got home, Mother and Daddy said, well, what are you going to do? Because I had just finished my junior year. I still had my senior year. We both had our senior year in school to go. And so my parents said, well, what are you going to do if you get hired by Waring? I said, well, if I've already registered for school, I'll stay in school because I didn't want to waste money. But I said, if I haven't registered, I will take the job. So that's fine. So, like, either the next day or the following day, I had to register for school. And the night before registration, Jim Wheeler called from the Waring organization and said, are you still interested in singing with the Pennsylvanians? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, that rehearsals start September 25th. And we expect you to be in New York, and I'll send you the information, send you a contract. And so I was in the process. I had started painting my apartment. It had knotty pine wood, and I had asked the landlord if I could paint it white because it was really dark. And so I had about half of my living room painted.
Oh, gosh,
And so I called my landlord and told him what was happening and said, I've started painting. I'll leave the paint here and my room. I don't. I didn't have a roommate. Bowie wasn't a roommate going to be that year. I think Tom Bledsoe might have been. But
He loves you.
anyway,
Left him with the
so I
mess.
called Mother and Daddy, and I said, "Can y'all possibly come?" I said, "Waring is called. They've hired me. Registration's tomorrow, so I'm going to take the job." And I said, "I have to be in New York the 25th. I think it's the 25th of September." And I said, "Could y'all come bring the trailer and get my stuff?" You know, I didn't have much furniture, but I had some,
Horse trailer,
and
of course.
television and all that kind of stuff. And I said, because I'm going to go to San Marcos before I come home. And they said, well, Mother and Daddy were both on different phones, and I said, well, I've got to go to San Marcos before I leave. And Mother said, well, what's in San Marcos? And I said, well, the girl I'm going to marry is in San Marcos. And I expected to hear bodies falling on the other end of the phone. And Mother just said, well, I knew that the first letter I got. And she told me later that always, whenever I would write, I would just talk about, you know, in generalities about girls that I was dating, because I dated a lot of girls. My goal when I was a freshman at Baylor was to date all the girls in the class, just to get to know everybody. And the first 28 days, I had coke dates or study dates with 30 girls.
Study dates, that's a good one.
And so anyway, but Mother said, I knew that there was something special because she said, I was reading a letter, and I said, I've met this girl. And then she said, I turned the page and it says Carol Conway. And she said, Wayne, there's something special here. Which, you know, with Mother's intuition. But anyway, so Mother and Dad came out and I helped them load the stuff. And then I went to San Marcos and said, well, I've got to go. And so then I flew to New York and rehearsals, and then our first performance, it was the 50th anniversary of Fred Waring and the Pennsylvanians. And so the first concert we were doing was this huge celebration of his 50th anniversary, and it was at the Waldorf Astoria, and there were hundreds of people there, and we had a mass choir of former Pennsylvanians plus the current Pennsylvanians. We performed, and then they had probably 100 Pennsylvanians that joined us for the thing, and Mamie Eisenhower was there, and a bunch of stars of the time were there, and it was quite exciting for this 21-year-old hick from the West Texas farm. And there were more forks and plates on the table than I've ever seen before or since.
Mom.
And then a month later, we had a bus wreck, and that's a later story.
I had gone out to do my whatever we do, observations and things I had to do at the high school. And Dr. Stone, my surrogate parents, whatever, had gone out there with him, as I usually would ride with him. And I was kind of close to that family. She's one that gave a shower for us once we were engaged. But I had gone back to the college, and next thing I knew, I worked for Dr. Stone also in his office. And he comes and looking for me, he says, Tony's been in a bus wreck. Pennsylvanians had a bus wreck on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and the bus driver was killed. Anyway, so I forget now what. I guess we tried to call and got you. And it
Dad
was scary.
was sitting up at the front of the bus with
Oh,
the.
yeah, he
Well,
was
I was paid extra $35 a week for being the bus captain. I planned when
And
we
those
would
toilet
leave
stops.
and where we would stop and all this. But I didn't stay at the front of the bus, but I did go up and talk to the bus driver from time to time. But actually, the bus driver and I were the only ones left in the hospital because I broke a little bone under my knee, and my teeth went through my bottom lip, and I lost one tooth and chipped another one. And I have the clippings of the thing, but it was funny. My uncle was in Japan in the Navy at that time, and he called my grandmother and told her about it. He had heard on the news before grandmother did that we were in this bus wreck, because it made world news. It was Fred Waring and the Pennsylvanians back in that time was a really big deal. And I was in the hospital for about 10 days. and they were making me walk. They said, "You're not going to leave the hospital till you can walk." And I had this broken leg, and we didn't know it. And finally, whenever I left the hospital, actually, the doctor thought I was, well, I wanted to go after a few days. I wanted to go see Jack, our bus driver. And the nurses kind of looked, let me get the doctor. I thought, well, that's weird. Why do you have to get the doctor? He's just another floor up or something. And so the doctor came and told me that he had died. And so I was the only one left there. And the most disappointing thing about it is that we were going to perform in Houston, and Carol had planned on coming to the concert. And so I was missing the performance that she was going to see.
So where was the wreck again?
It was in Suderton, Pennsylvania, on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. It was between Pittsburgh and Somerset. I think it was Somerset's where I was in the hospital.
So you were in the hospital, and did anyone come visit?
No.
It was too far.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my parents said I could, but I said it's silly. There's no reason for them to. But they, the doctor and his wife took me out for dinner. I'd never had lobster before, and they asked me if I'd had lobster, and I said no. So we had steak and lobster, and then a couple of days later, I was finally walking, but it really hurt, and I kept telling them it hurt. But they released me from the hospital, and they had a private plane. I'd never been in a little plane before, and they put me on a private plane and flew me to Pittsburgh to fly out to Texas. And when I got home, my leg was so swollen, the mother said, "We're going to another doctor." And so we went to Lubbock, and the doctor got out this huge needle and stuck it in me. And when we brought all this fluid out, this big syringe, he got this fluid out, and he said, "The fluid shouldn't be red." He said, "There's a break or it wouldn't be red."
Yeah.
And so because they had to x-ray like 45 of us.
Yeah.
And we were all, I don't know why I was the one that picked. Well, there were several. I was in the hospital at first, but I was the last one to leave the hospital. And so then they ended up taking one of my shoes and building a brace that came all the way up, and there's a little bone under your hip that I didn't know even existed, under your butt cheek. And they put all the weight on this little bone, and I was on that thing for about 4 months, and I didn't go back to the tour until the wreck happened on Daddy's birthday, October 25th. So it was October 25th of 1966, and I didn't go back on tour until after Christmas. I was in Reno. I joined the tour in Reno after Christmas, but we were still doing Christmas music, and
But you came to the Christmas. Kyle made
yeah, tell them about that.
in a brace and all. Yeah. Yeah, and crutching. What did you
Well, tell
have?
them
Was
what
it
it
just
was.
the brace that you came in out to the formal? That was the formal, that dress that I wore that Gail borrowed.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, no, I had crutches at that time. I had to use the crutches until I got used to the
Yeah.
other thing.
That's a piece, one of the pieces was missing when we bought it. We had it carved and made. It probably
Sorry,
is-
we're such chatty Cathy's. I think you need to close because you needed to leave at 3, and that was 10 minutes ago. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I had another question. Let's see. So when did you stop touring?
Well, we were supposed to be through touring in April, the first part of May, and then we were extended.
and
We had
that
set
was scary.
our wedding date for May 30th, which was the actual Memorial Day. It was on a Tuesday, but since it was a holiday, that was the day because she was graduating, and I was going to go back to school, and then the tour was actually going to end on May 30th.
Yeah.
But since we already had the date set when the tour extended, Mr. Reagan let me out of the last 3 performances, and so I left the tour before it was finished, and I took a bus to New York, and I went to the theater that night and got tickets to see Robert Preston and Mary Martin doing "I Do, I Do," which is the best musical in the world for a kid getting ready to go get married, because it's about this couple getting ready to say I do, and then it goes through their whole lifetime until they're leaving their house after 50 years. And I said, I love this musical, and I ordered the music before it was even published, and I have the score. And I always hoped that we would do it, but we never did get to do it. But
So then what about your wedding day?
Oh my gosh, do we even want to go into that? No, all this time I had to graduate, do a senior recital, finish my student teaching, plan a wedding. What else? It was a busy time. I mean, I fell down the steps at Southwest Texas coming down from whatever classes and stuff.
What?
Cracked my tailbone. That was the little
broke her
moments. That
tailbone
was
right before we got
sometimes.
married.
Yeah, all dumb stuff. Anyway, yep. So for the wedding, we were worried to death that he would get snowed in or something, even if it was May 30th. You never know. And yet, with the thing getting extended, but he made it back, and we did. Phil stayed at Nancy's house, right?
Phil and I stayed at
Phil and
Nancy's
Tony
house.
stayed at Nancy's house
Phil.
down the street from Mom
Sitting
and Dad.
my best man. I had been his best man the month before.
And I had made my dress way in advance, had finished it, folded up. Evidently, I had folded my. It was off the cover of Bride's magazine, the dress that I made, everything, the pattern, and the train was kind of contemporary, modern. I could fold it all up like a table, like a extended
Table
runner. Yeah.
You made it from nothing?
I bought the material and all the lace and stuff, yeah.
And the pattern.
And patterns and stuff. Simplicity pattern, yeah. Wasn't one of the difficult ones. It was simple, but whatever. Anyway, and I made all the bridesmaids things, the little things they carried. We had, 4 or 5. Anyway, and had everything ready. I thought, went to getting dressed. My train was nowhere to be found. Guess what? It was in a box. It was packed. We don't know this day who helped pack it. We accused
packed in
Nancy
the back of our
packing
car.
in the back of his car, but we couldn't go through anything. I couldn't go down to Nancy's house and go through things. So supposedly they looked and didn't find it. I had to make a new train. Luckily, I had a bunch of extra material because it was a pretty big train. Old Tony liked this, but it had to be sewn onto my dress. The other one, it was all attached and everything.
So the mother of one of her bridesmaids helped sew her into her new
Dorothy
thing.
Ship sewed it all on me. So then she had to take it off to put my going away outfit on. I mean, unsew it. But I guess I left the train on until the
And meanwhile,
reception.
we're
through reception.
at the church. Phil's not there because he's with her, helping her get into the train stuff.
Having dark
and
out.
a train stopped them on the way to the wedding.
Real choo-choo train.
And meanwhile, the
stopped.
wedding is already supposed to have started. And I thought, oh great, I've been left at the altar with no bride.
No.
What
And-
time was the wedding?
I don't remember. It's
We have it on the
upstairs.
little thing upstairs, whatever. I
It
can't
was an
remember.
afternoon.
Afternoon,
late
it was an evening
It was
wedding.
late
dear.
afternoon.
It wasn't. It was at night wedding. That's why I was thrilled she's having something during
Wouldn't
the
you
day.
have to have dinner?
No, of
No,
course
we
not.
had
They don't have that kind of thing.
mint and
You
little
had
mints
You have your
and
cake
punch and cake.
and nuts and mints in your yard. That's what we had. And Daddy put up lights and things, and we had it with the moss coming down. It was real pretty. It really was.
Weren't you worried about having your reception outside?
We just lucked out, I guess. May 30th.
May's a pretty dry month.
What was your backup?
We didn't have any, I don't guess.
Probably
I guess
had
the
it at
church. The church, because we could have had it at the church easily. Reception hall would have been big, plenty big, because there were so many things going on. We didn't have that huge in attendance.
It was graduation.
Yeah, it was a bad time. It really was. But he had to get back in school, so it was all according to his schedule with school, getting back what we did and didn't do.
I guess that the extension of the Waring tour, I don't think we went straight from one part into the extension. I think that we must have had some time off because I came home for Phil's wedding, and I wouldn't have been able to do that if I were still performing. So I think that maybe we came back for
Phil.
like a 3-week extension or
Phil's
something.
wedding. Yeah, Phil got married,
1 month exactly before us.
I thought it was April 24th. Well, I thought it was April.
It was. We were May.
April 24th is not a month, exactly a month from 30th.
Did anyone from the workshop come to the wedding?
No, no.
No, got lots of gifts from people. Some from whoever we sent things to.
We got a Waring blender from Mr. Waring.
That we hated to part with. He went broke.
She
Kept it around forever.
Wearing blender.
Oh yeah, he made Waring
No.
blenders.
Oh. So it wasn't just that it happened to have his name.
Oh no, he
Fred Waring
he had the patent on it.
We could give you a little glass that you,
Well, that was,
magnifying
everybody
glass.
got that for Christmas.
Yeah. So
Magnifying glass with his signature on it.
he was a little.
And I have
man.
buttons from my blazer. We had a uniform that we had to wear on the
Cufflinks?
bus. Yeah, no, it was. I got them to make cufflinks, but I never did. It said the first 50 years was the on the button.
Really pretty programs. We have some. That big old chest in there probably has some to this day. We need to go through that and throw away too. We probably had music in there. We collected samples and gave us at February.
So you
Okay.
had 2 outfits?
Huh?
You said you had 2 outfits?
Did you have 2 outfits?
You.
For what?
Your wedding dress and then you're going
I
away?
yeah.
had a, I
Yeah,
had a
absolutely.
cream color with orange trim.
And an orange
sash,
hat.
A hat, yeah. A big picture hat.
It wasn't a
Got-
big picture thing. It was a little hat with a veil over it.
Pillbox?
Pillbox, yeah.
I thought I had the one with the big brim. Never mind, I,
I can
had
show
that
you
too.
the picture.
Okay, that's fine.
What about your rehearsal dinner?
It was,
Or did you
it was
even
at
do a
Aqua
rehearsal?
I
Arena.
had a
How
hot
did
pink
that
or
work?
something I think I wore for that. I don't know whatever happened to it. It seemed like a hot pink with something.
I think so. I
think
had a
it
tan
was.
suit. And that was at Aqua Arena Springs.
Yeah, that was neat. That was neat, and that place is
And I gave her a jewelry box that had a little
plaque.
plaque thing
A
inside
little
it
plaque inside, engraved.
that had a
Be smart
little
about
bit
it.
of a song from the Waring show called "As Beats the Ocean Wings Upon the Sand, so beats my heart for you." And she gave me a little diamond tie tack, which I wore to church about 3 weeks ago.
That jewelry box, is that the one that's up on your
Yes,
piece of furniture upstairs that you had to
That's
cut
right.
into the ceiling for?
yes.
Something happened to that, and we had to have it repaired. Did the glass something broke? Maybe the plaque fell off.
The plaque fell off.
Yeah, it didn't break ever. Okay.
So what do you remember the most about your wedding day?
The train, not finding the train, have to make one all over again in that short amount of time, but I did. And put some lace on some. It was okay.
The wedding night.
Okay. Where was that?
Our first night we stayed at the Gondolier, which was on I-35. It was a new hotel at that time, a new motel, just going into Austin, and it's since been torn down. There's a new one in place of it.
There's an
And then
ugly
we went-
apartment building on top of our pretty
Then-
place.
Then we went from there to Fort Worth, where we stayed at Green Oaks Inn, which was also fairly new at that time. And we went to Six Flags over Texas, and we went to Casa. While she was getting dressed one day, I called in. We were getting ready to go to Casa Manana to a show. We went to see, on a clear day you can see forever.
Oh, yeah.
And then the radio station was having a giveaway for free tickets to Casa Manana. And so I called in and got the tickets for another show later on that we came back to Fort Worth for. And we went to Sparky and Mary Beckham's, and we had shrimp curry that they fixed for us. But on the way up, I didn't have my camera, so we stopped in Waco and had lunch the day after our first night at El Chico with a whole bunch of my better
All of his
friends.
friends. He'll never
And
live it
she
down.
hated that.
Yeah, I hated that. Here I had to face all of his friends on my honeymoon. Day after I got married. Oh well.
What
Wasn't the
was,
first
what was
time.
your getaway car?
It was a blue Chevrolet.
Oh, the Chevrolet with the white interior that he drove up to my house in.
I
He
bought it
with
when we
me.
got engaged,
Nothing about it, yeah.
when I got out of tour. Daddy was a car dealer at the time, and I bought this car, bought it new, never heard the end of it since.
How much?
White interior.
How much did weddings cost in that year?
Not much, I don't remember. I was my big tour of this with this famous group. I got $160 a week.
Isn't that amazing?
But then when we first got out of college, when she got out of college, she was making $4,000 a year, teaching school.
Yeah, and you know what? Of course, then we had Baylor to pay for, and I wanted to pay that off. We did. We put it off a little bit because if you taught some, you got
You get
a certain
10%
credit
off every year that I taught.
So we put it off until we thought we were probably done with our teaching, which was pretty soon because we weren't either one thrilled with it. It's one of those things you just do because it's a job. I didn't. Well, it's my principal experience.
Hey.